Dead Code Diaries.
Chico and David were cruising down a quiet mountain road late at night, the city lights far behind them. The darkness was thick, but their spirits were high. Music blasted through the speakers, their favorite playlist echoing in the confined space of the car. They laughed, sang off-key, and shouted out lyrics as if the night belonged only to them. They were on their way to visit an old friend who had recently moved to a small cabin deep in the woods. A spontaneous trip just the way they liked it. As they turned a bend, David glanced at the rearview mirror and frowned. "Hey, was that car always behind us?" Chico looked back. A white sedan trailed them. Not too close, not too far, just following. "Probably just someone on the same route," Chico said with a shrug, turning the music louder. Minutes passed. The car didn't overtake, didn't slow down. It kept the same distance, like a shadow that refused to disappear. They tried slowing down, even pulling slightly to the side, motioning it to pass. But the white car didn't budge. "Okay, this is getting weird," David muttered, a nervous laugh betraying his growing discomfort. Chico pressed the gas, the engine roaring as their car picked up speed. But the white sedan stayed with them, always behind, never beside. "I don't like this," David said. "What if it's some psycho or carjackers?" Chico nodded, jaw tight, hands gripping the steering wheel. "Hold on." They sped faster, the night becoming a blur of trees and shadows. But still, the white car followed, effortlessly, like it wasn't bound by the same rules of the road. David leaned back and squinted through the rear window, trying to get a better look. Then he froze. There's no one driving it." "What?" Chico's voice cracked. "There's no one in that car. I swear to God, Chico, no one's behind the wheel." Chico's hands trembled. The road ahead twisted like a serpent, but his heart pounded louder than the tires against the asphalt. Panic began to rise, choking the air in the car. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the road. "Chico, stop!" But it was too late. The body hit the windshield with a sickening crack, then rolled over the hood before disappearing beneath the car. Brakes screamed, smoke, silence. They stumbled out of the vehicle, hands shaking, breath short and wild. Lying on the road was a man, broken, still, blood pooling around him. David fell to his knees, disbelief painting his face. No, it can't be." Chico stared, mouth agape. It's him. It's Ray, their friend, the one they stood in stunned silence, reality warping around them. Then the white car rolled silently past them. It didn't stop, it didn't slow down. But as it passed under the faint moonlight, they saw through its window a hooded figure, pale, eyes like voids, a scythe across its lap. The Grim Reaper. The white car vanished into the night. Chico and David were left on the road, frozen in horror. Behind them, their dead friend. Ahead of them, a darkness they could never explain. The music still played in their car, now soft and haunting, as if Lynn Knight was singing a requiem for the soul that had just been taken.
Agnes was an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Every day, she clocked in at 6 a.m. sharp at the corner convenience store. A dull routine filled with beeping scanners, warm coffee, and small talk with regulars. Every evening, she caught the same bus home, always at 9:15 p.m. The same route, the same tired faces, the same silence. But not tonight. Tonight, as Agnes stood under the flickering light of the bus stop, the wind carried a strange stillness. The usual hum of distant cars was gone. Her breath fogged slightly in the unseasonal cold. Then she saw them. A woman and a young girl approached the stop. The girl, maybe 5 or 6, wore a red coat with puffy sleeves and 2 pigtails tied with yellow ribbons. She clung to a small stuffed bunny, its fur worn from love. Agnes smiled, unable to resist. "Hi there, sweetheart," she said warmly. But it was the mother who responded. "Hello," she said with a polite nod. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Her eyes, though kind, seemed weighed down by something invisible. The bus arrived with its usual hiss of brakes and exhale of stale air. Agnes climbed aboard, nodded at the driver, and took her usual seat halfway down the aisle. The woman and child sat directly in front of her. As the city lights passed like ghosts outside the window, Agnes felt a tap on her knee. It was the girl. Peeking through the gap between the seats, her eyes wide with playful innocence, she whispered, "Peekaboo!" Agnes laughed. "Peekaboo!" she whispered back, covering her eyes. They played all the way down the avenue, smiling, laughing softly so as not to disturb the other passengers. For the first time in weeks, Agnes felt joy melt away the tiredness she always carried. The bus slowed to a stop. The woman stood silently and made her way to the doors. Agnes leaned over to wave one last time. "Goodbye, sweetheart," she said with a fond smile. But something was wrong. The little girl was gone. The seat was empty. Agnes stood up quickly and looked around. No trace of the girl. Her eyes darted to the bus window as the woman stepped off into the streetlight's glow, alone. Panic clutched Agnes's chest. She rushed to the front, shouting at the driver, "Stop, please, that woman, she left her daughter." The brakes squealed. The doors opened. Agnes ran out and caught up to the woman. "Miss, your daughter. She's still on the bus." The woman turned slowly, her face pale in the artificial glow. "I'm sorry," she said, puzzled. "Your little girl, red coat, yellow ribbons. She was sitting in front of me. You forgot her." The woman stared at Agnes with a look that made the air feel suddenly colder. "I don't have a daughter," she said softly. "Not anymore." Agnes felt her stomach twist. She was just here. The woman's eyes shimmered with something deep. Grief, memory. "My daughter died exactly a year ago on this bus. She loved riding it. Every night after work, I still take the same route, just to feel like she's with me." Agnes stared at her, mouth slightly open. trying to make sense of the cold air she now felt, the echo of laughter still ringing in her ears. "I saw her," Agnes whispered. "We played peekaboo." The woman gave her a faint smile, one filled with sadness too old to cry anymore. "Then maybe," she said, "she just wanted to play. One last time." And with that, she turned and vanished into the night fog. Agnes stood frozen, the echo of a child's giggle brushing her ear like a breeze. She never took that bus again.
For 50 years, Alberto had driven bus 27 through the winding roads of the town, rain or shine, dusk or dawn. The locals knew him well, quiet, polite, with eyes that never seemed to age. He never took a day off, never missed a stop. On a foggy Thursday night, his bus had only a handful of passengers, some sleepy students, exhausted office workers, and a few regulars heading home. It was unusually silent. Even the humming engine seemed hesitant. Then, without warning, a man near the middle of the bus stood up, pulling a gun from his coat. "Nobody move," he barked. "You, keep driving," he shouted to Alberto. Gasps and muffled cries filled the bus. The man stalked the aisle, collecting wallets, phones, jewelry, anything of value. Some passengers begged, others prayed. Alberto kept his eyes on the road, knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Please," he said softly, "take what you want. Just let them go." The man grinned. "You must have made good cash tonight, huh, old man? Don't worry, I'll take that too." He laughed cruelly as he stepped forward and struck Alberto on the side of the head with his pistol. Blood trickled down the driver's temple, but he kept driving, hands trembling. "I said please," Alberto whispered again, more insistently. "Shut up," the man snapped. "I'll do what I want." The bus jerked to a sudden stop on a lonely stretch of road. The headlights illuminated the trees, twisted like claws. Alberto turned to face the gunman, eyes dark and distant. "Leave, now." The man shoved him back. "Or what, huh?" Before anyone could react, the gun went off, point blank, into Alberto's head. The bus fell into a paralyzed silence. Some screamed, others cried. The gunman cackled. "That's what you get for interfering, you old fool." But then, something strange happened. His arm twitched. His laughter died. "What the?" he muttered, watching his own hand raise the gun again, this time toward his own face. "No, no, stop!" he screamed, but it was no longer his to command. In one final helpless breath, he pulled the trigger. His lifeless body slumped to the floor. Then came the creak of movement. Gasps rippled through the passengers as Alberto sat up behind the wheel, his wound already vanishing like dust in the air. He looked back at them, his eyes glowing faintly red. "I told him to leave," he said calmly, as if nothing had happened. The passengers sat frozen in disbelief. One woman whispered, "The town legend, the devil, the bus driver." It was true. Alberto never took a day off, because death had never come for him. Not because he feared it, because he was it. Since that night, no one ever dared rob Bus 27 again. Some say you can still ride with Alberto. If you're lucky or unlucky, enough to catch the last bus. Just remember, be respectful, stay in your seat, and whatever you do, don't interfere. In a quiet old town surrounded by hills and misty mornings, there lived an elderly farmer named Manuel. Everyone knew him, always with his straw hat, always with a sack of vegetables in one hand, and always riding the same creaky bicycle from his cottage to the town's edge, where his modest farm lay. He was known as a kind soul. He'd give away his crops to hungry children, to widows, to strangers. He's one of the last good ones, the townsfolk would say, but one day, something changed. Manuel began to notice something strange. His vegetables, large amounts of them, started vanishing. Not the usual critters or nature's doing, but careful, consistent stealing. He didn't mind giving, but being stolen from, that was different. Determined to catch the thief, Manuel began patrolling his farm each night on his bicycle, flashlight and old shotgun strapped to his back. At first, all was quiet. Then, one night, he heard it, a roaring engine tearing through the fields. By the time he reached the scene, half his crops were gone again. Still, he didn't stop. Weeks later, he finally caught them. Two young men digging up his land and loading his produce into bags. He approached them, shouted, but they weren't afraid. They laughed. They beat the old man down, spit on him, and that night, something inside Manuel snapped. He reached for the shotgun. Two thunderous blasts. Silence. Manuel buried them in the center of his farm. After that, peace returned. Crops grew. No one stole again. But Manuel's nights turned darker. He began feeling watched on his rides home. Shadows that weren't there. Whispers in the wind. Then came the voice. This old man Manuel isn't the person you think. He tried to brush it off. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe just age. But the dreams came. Nightmares of blood-soaked strangers standing at the foot of his bed, whispering his name, staring with hollow eyes. Every night, more of them, different faces, and each one seemed familiar. Soon, Manuel stopped sleeping. He worked by day with shaking hands and patrolled at night out of paranoia. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered outside. There they were, dozens of people, silent, pale, rotting, standing just beyond the fence of his home, eyes locked on him, mouths moving in perfect unison. Manuel. He screamed. He ran. He rode his bicycle into the foggy night, riding faster than he ever had before. And when the mist cleared, he found himself in front of the police station. Inside, Manuel collapsed in. I killed them, he whispered. The thieves, I buried them. But that's not all. There's more. So many more. The officers looked at each other, uneasy. Manuel went on. Names, descriptions, bodies. He spoke of dozens, then 100, each with horrifying detail, all buried in his farm. He even remembered how he killed them. Poison stew, sharpened tools, ambush in the woods. But the town remembered no missing people, no reports, no signs. The next day, investigators dug up the center of his farm. 2 decomposed bodies, just like he said. So they kept digging. Day after day, they found more. Dozens. Manuel was no kind old man. He was something else. Something buried under years of gentle smiles and baskets of free vegetables. And from that day on, the people of that town never passed by that lonely stretch of land again. Not because of what grew there, but because of what still whispered from beneath. Miguel was no stranger to the dark. Every night after his shift at the warehouse, he rode his motorcycle down the same lonely road, surrounded by towering trees and a silence that could swallow you whole. That's when he started seeing her. A woman, always standing in the same spot on the roadside, wearing a long white dress that shimmered under the moonlight. Her name was Anna. At first he didn't stop. Who would? But night after night, she was there, never asking for help, never moving, just waiting. After a week, curiosity won. Miguel stopped his motorcycle, heart pounding. "You okay?" he asked. She turned, her voice soft and distant. "I'm lost." That was all. No other explanation. He began visiting her every night, talking, laughing, confiding. Anna was strange, detached, calm, and eerily graceful. Miguel noticed things, like how she never touched anything. When he offered her food or a bottle of water, she'd always smile and say, "No thank you, I don't need that." She never sat, never shivered in the cold. He asked once where she lived. She just said, "Far from here." But Miguel didn't care. She was the only one who truly listened, the only one who didn't judge. They walked through the woods together, hand in hand, or so it felt. He started to fall for her. She became his world. Then one afternoon, at work, a coworker approached him. "Hey, I gotta tell you something weird." Miguel wiped the grease from his hands. "What's up?" "There's a story going around. People driving past the forest road at night. They see you, standing on the side, alone, talking, smiling, but you're by yourself." Miguel laughed nervously. "No, I'm always with Anna." His coworker frowned. "Miguel, there's no one else there." Miguel's stomach twisted. That night, after work, he rode faster than usual. He needed to see her, to understand. When he arrived, she was gone. Panic set in. He called out her name. "Anna." No answer. He turned off the engine and stepped into the forest, the cold air wrapping around him like a warning. Then he saw her, standing among the trees, smiling. "Anna." Miguel walked toward her. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. A long embrace, but something was wrong. His chest began to tighten. His limbs trembled. He felt trapped. "I want to show you something," Anna whispered. "A beautiful place. Come with me." Miguel hesitated. That's when he saw it. Far beyond the trees, hanging from a thick, twisted branch, was a body. A woman, pale, motionless, wearing the same white dress Anna had on. He froze, eyes wide, breath shallow. The truth slammed into him. Anna was dead. She had taken her own life in these woods, and now she wanted him to join her. Her arms gripped tighter. "Please," she whispered, now pleading. "Come with me. I don't want to be alone anymore." Miguel's heart raced. "No." She smiled through tears. "Just say yes." With every ounce of strength, he tore himself from her grasp. She screamed, a horrible, heartbroken sound. Miguel turned and ran, branches slashing his face, thorns clawing at his skin. He didn't stop until he reached the road. He looked back. Anna stood at the edge of the trees, crying. Then, slowly, she smiled, and she shouted, "Come back!" Miguel rode away that night, and he never returned. But sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls through the forest road, you might hear a woman's voice, still waiting. The De La Cruz family, Emilio, Ilana, and their bright-eyed 3-year-old daughter Luna, had just moved from Mexico to a small, misty town nestled in the heart of an Asian country. They were eager to start a new chapter. The air was different, the trees taller, the language strange but melodic. Still, they felt peace. Their days were filled with laughter. Emilio worked from home, while Ilana tended to their cozy cottage near the edge of a forest. Luna, ever curious, often played near the garden with her beloved cloth doll, a gift from her grandmother back in Mexico. Then one afternoon, Luna vanished. No sound, no scream, just gone. Ilana had turned her back for seconds, just to hang clothes on the line, and when she turned again, Luna and her doll were missing. Panic spread like wildfire. The townspeople helped search, and the woods were combed for days, but there were no signs, no footprints, no sounds, no clues. Weeks passed. Grief became routine. But one midnight, as fog crept around the trees and silence thickened, Emilio and Ilana saw something in the woods, a small figure resting unnaturally still on a tree stump. It was Luna's doll, worn, mud-stained, yet oddly untouched by time. They brought it home. At first, it was a painful reminder, but then the strange things started. The doll would move, at first subtle, a change in posture, shifting eyes, a different location. One night, they woke up with a weight on the bed. The doll was standing on Emilio's chest, its button eyes wet, as if crying. They tried to burn it, but the fire wouldn't catch. They threw it into the river. It was back on their kitchen table the next morning, dry. Doors creaked open. Whispering filled the halls at night. Ilana heard giggles that sounded just like Luna. Shadows of small feet would dart down the hallway. Emilio broke. Desperate, they sought out a local witch doctor, an old woman with white eyes and a voice like cracking ice. She held the doll close, muttered words in a tongue they didn't know, then dropped it. Her voice trembled. "This is no longer a doll. It is your daughter." That night, the doll spoke, a trembling, broken voice, "Mama, Papa, help me." The parents fell to their knees, tears, begging, regret, desperation. Following the witch doctor's cryptic directions, they returned to the woods under a blood moon. Ilana cradled the doll. Emilio clutched a candle that wouldn't stay lit. They called out to the dark, "Bring our daughter back. Take whatever you need." The wind stopped, and then he appeared, a creature of shadows and bones, eyes hollow, teeth long. His voice was wet with decay. He laughed, loud, inhuman, hungry. "Your daughter's soul is trapped. I can bring her back, but I need 2 souls to replace her." Without hesitation, they agreed. But demons never keep their promises. Luna never returned, and Emilio, Elena, and even the doll were never seen again. Instead, rumors began. Families who bought old dolls from the local night market would hear soft crying at night. The dolls would appear in places they weren't left. Sometimes, they would speak in a mix of Spanish and whispers. Locals say 3 cursed dolls now exist, known as Los Muñecos Malditos, the cursed dolls, and if you listen closely at night, you'll hear them calling for their parents or looking for another family to take their place. It was the beginning of October when the Rowan family moved into their new home on Elm Hollow, a quiet cul-de-sac in a sleepy town nestled between thick woods and low-lying mist. The house was old, Victorian in design, with creaking floors and ivy curling up its sides. It had been vacant for years, but something about its charm had drawn Ethan and Marissa Rowan in. Along with their teenage daughter Clara and their 8-year-old son Ben, they were looking for a fresh start, far from the bustle of city life. The neighbors seemed warm and welcoming. Within the first few days, plates of baked goods appeared at their doorstep, and the neighbors introduced themselves with practiced smiles. Across the street lived the Mallorys, Vincent and Evelyn, an elegant, pale-skinned couple in their 40s who dressed a little too formally. Next door were the friendly Parkers, a quiet couple in their 30s with a baby that Clara noticed never seemed to cry. Everyone on Elm Hollow seemed nice, almost too nice. Then came the invitation. A black envelope was slipped under their door one misty morning. Inside was a beautifully embossed card. "You are cordially invited to the annual Elm Hollow Halloween Gala, a tradition as old as the Hollow itself. Costumes required, drinks provided, fun guaranteed. October 31st, 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., hosted by Vincent and Evelyn Mallory. Don't be late. We've been waiting a long time for you." The Rowan family chuckled at the melodramatic wording and decided to go. Clara dressed as a witch, Ben a little vampire, Marissa as a fairy queen, and Ethan, ever the Joker, went as a vampire hunter. The Mallory house was like something out of an old Gothic film. Towering candelabras, velvet curtains, chandeliers that seemed to sway, with no breeze. The guests, all the familiar neighbors, were dressed in stunningly elaborate costumes. Vincent and Evelyn, of course, were in traditional vampire garb, almost too convincing. As the night went on, the Rowans drank the crimson punch, which they joked tasted oddly metallic, laughed with their neighbors, and enjoyed the eerie music echoing through the halls. But Clara noticed something strange. There were no mirrors. Every wall that should have had one was instead covered in rich tapestries, more dark paintings of pale people with hollow eyes. And the Mallorys had an uncanny way of appearing beside you without a sound, speaking in hushed tones, an old-fashioned speech. Ben wandered off at one point, and when Marissa found him, he was staring, entranced, at a painting of a woman whose eyes seemed to follow him. Then the power went out. At first, everyone laughed it off. Vincent lit the candles with a silver lighter and offered a toast to tradition. But the mood had changed. Clara clutched her father's arm. Guests began disappearing. Marissa went to use the bathroom and never returned. Ethan brushed it off until Clara went searching for her mother and came back pale, whispering that she saw something in the hall. A figure crawling on the ceiling, eyes glowing red. Panic set in when they realized Ben was gone. The guests tried to leave, but the doors were locked. The windows wouldn't break. One neighbor, Mr. Tully, ran screaming into the basement, looking for an exit. But what they heard wasn't a man escaping. It was the sound of tearing and screaming and silence. Clara and Ethan pushed deeper into the house, searching for Ben, navigating halls that didn't seem to be there before. The layout of the mansion changed with each turn. The paintings were now twisted and grotesque, the eyes blinking, mouths smiling. Whispers drifted from the walls. Finally, they found Marissa, chained in a candlelit room, her eyes wide with terror. And in the center of the room was Ben, levitating. Around him stood the neighbors, no longer pretending to be human. Their skin was gray and translucent, eyes black like ink. Their fangs glistened. Evelyn's voice rang out in a cold tone. He is pure, the first in generations. His blood will complete the covenant. Vincent turned to Ethan. The invitation was not just for a party. It was for a ritual. In a desperate act, Ethan lunged for his son, but Vincent moved impossibly fast, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him into the air. But something changed. Ben's body erupted in a shockwave of energy, throwing the vampires back. His eyes glowed gold. The sigil drawn on the floor beneath him burned, and the vampires hissed, backing away. "He is not what you think," a voice echoed. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a hunched ancient man dressed in tattered robes. "The boy is not your offering. He is the hunter reborn." The Mallorys screamed. Ethan, choking, stared in disbelief as Ben's form shifted slightly, glowing brighter. He was no ordinary boy. The vampires had been tricked. The invitation was real, the ritual ancient, but the stars had misaligned. The child born to end their rule had arrived, and they had invited him in. Ben raised his tiny hand. Light seared from his palm like the sun, and the vampires screamed as their bodies turned to ash. One by one they crumbled, Vincent last, crying out in fury and pain. The house burned to the ground that night. Police found nothing but ash and blackened bone in the ruins. The Rowans were found wandering the woods, dazed, holding each other tightly. They never spoke of what happened, not to friends, not to family. They moved far away, to a city with bright lights and noisy streets. But Ben remembered, and on the eve of every Halloween, he drew the same symbol on the floor of his room. He stared into the candlelight, waiting, because something else had spoken to him that night, and it promised it would return. The McAllister family lived in the sleepy town of Cedar Hollow, tucked away in the misty mountains of Oregon. Life there was quiet, uneventful, perfect for raising a family. Eric and Dana McAllister had 2 children, Lucas, 14, and Chloe, 9, and a golden retriever named Max, who was as much a part of the family as any of them. Max was gentle, loyal, always wagging its tail and licking faces. He slept at the foot of Chloe's bed every night and greeted them at the door every afternoon. Then one cold November morning, Max disappeared. Eric remembered opening the back door to let him out for his usual morning run around their forested backyard. But Max didn't come back. They searched the neighborhood, the woods, even put up flyers and called local shelters. But weeks passed, then months. Max was gone. Chloe cried every night for a month. Lucas stopped talking about him. Dana eventually put away Max's toys and bowls in a box in the attic. They moved on. Life became normal again. Until exactly 1 year later. It was a foggy autumn evening when they heard scratching at the front door. Eric opened it and froze. There, sitting in the pale glow of the porch light, was Max. He was dirty, thinner, with matted fur and eyes that seemed darker somehow. But unmistakably, it was Max. Chloe screamed with joy, ran to him and hugged him tightly. Max didn't wag his tail. Eric and Dana exchanged glances, uneasy. Maybe he's just tired, Dana whispered. Or been through something rough, Eric replied. They welcomed him back, cleaned him up, fed him. Chloe was overjoyed. Lucas, more reserved. Max followed Chloe everywhere again. But something was off. He didn't bark anymore. He didn't whine. He didn't react to the squeaky toys he used to love. At night, they heard him pacing in the hallway, sometimes scratching at walls. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, red like embers. And then the first strange thing happened. One night, Lucas stayed up late playing video games. The house was silent except for the hum of the screen. Max was lying nearby, seemingly asleep. Suddenly, the screen flickered, even though the power didn't go out. A shadow crossed the screen that didn't belong to anyone in the room. Lucas turned to look at Max. Max was standing now, staring directly at him. His head tilted unnaturally to the side, mouth open in a silent snarl. His eyes weren't just glowing. They were burning. Lucas blinked. Max lunged, but not physically. His mind was filled with a screaming voice, like static and growling in one. He clutched his head, dropped to the floor. When Dana found him the next morning, he was unconscious, nose bleeding, muttering something in a language she didn't understand. He didn't speak for 2 days. When he did, all he said was, "It's not Max." Chloe was closest to Max, and he stayed with her more and more, but her behavior started to change. She stopped smiling. She stopped eating. She'd sit in her room, whispering into Max's ear. Sometimes Max would whisper back in growls and clicks. Dana found drawings in her notebook. Dark figures with horns, circles of fire, and eyes bleeding shadows. One night, Dana woke up to hear singing. She followed the voice to Chloe's room. The door was open. Chloe stood in the middle of the room, barefoot, eyes closed, humming in a voice far too deep for a child. Max sat beside her, head raised as if in trance. The walls were covered in claw marks. "Chloe?" Dana asked. Chloe opened her eyes. They were black. Dana screamed. Eric took matters into his own hands. He remembered the old ranger who lived on the edge of the forest, Old Man Heron, who was said to know things. Eric visited him. When Eric told him Max had returned after a year, Heron's face turned pale. "Where'd he disappear?" Eric told him, "Near the stone clearing behind the woods." Heron nodded grimly. "There's an old tale. That's not a dog you have now. Something followed you home. Something came back wearing your dog's skin." Heron gave him an old book, Bestiary of the Lost Woods, filled with sketches and symbols. He showed Eric a creature known as the Barghest, a spirit that could take the form of a dog, feeding off fear and corruption. It returns to the homes of those who loved it. It attaches to the youngest, feeding slowly. If it fully bonded to Chloe, she'd be lost forever. Eric rushed home, book in hand, determined to save his daughter. He found the house in darkness, all lights off, silent. Then he heard scratching from the ceiling. He followed it, heart pounding, up to the attic. There, in a chalk-drawn circle surrounded by burning candles, Chloe sat cross-legged. Her mouth was open in a scream, but no sound came out. Max, no, the thing was beside her, towering now, its form shifting, jaws stretched into a grotesque smile, fur shedding in clumps to reveal muscle and black bone. Dana lay unconscious on the floor. Eric stepped into the circle, book in one hand, pocket knife in the other. He chanted the incantation Heron had circled in red. The demon howled. The room shook. Blood poured from Eric's nose. The walls bled. Chloe levitated, eyes rolling back. Then, everything stopped. Max let out a final growl and collapsed, his form shriveling into a heap of black ash. Chloe dropped to the floor, gasping. Dana woke up. Lucas burst in. It was over. Weeks passed. The McAllisters tried to heal. Chloe improved. Lucas spoke again. They buried what was left of Max in the backyard under the old oak tree. One afternoon, Chloe came inside holding something. "Look what I found," she said, smiling for the first time in weeks. It was a puppy, small, brown, fluffy, with big eyes. It followed me home. Eric and Dana exchanged looks. The puppy sat down, wagging its tail. Then it blinked, and its eyes flickered red.
"15 years ago, in the sleepy mountain town of Elm Ridge, the Wards were just another average family. Gregory Ward was a high school history teacher. His wife, Marla, ran a home-based cake business. They had one child, Emily, a shy but sweet 10-year-old girl who loved drawing fairies and collecting pressed flowers. Life in Elm Ridge was quiet. Too quiet, perhaps. The kind of place where everyone smiled, but secrets thrived behind drawn curtains. That summer, Emily was preparing a scrapbook for a school project, pasting leaves, doodles, and family photos. One afternoon, she asked her parents if she could go into the woods behind their house to gather flowers. Marla hesitated. Those woods had an eerie feel, but Greg shrugged it off. "She'll be fine. It's broad daylight." Emily never came back. They searched. The whole town searched. Dogs, helicopters, police, nothing. Her favorite purple backpack was found snagged in some brambles near the old creek. But no sign of her. Just gone. The Wards were devastated, but no charges were filed. Just sympathy. Just whispers behind their backs. On a cold November night, 15 years to the day after Emily vanished, Greg and Marla were home. They didn't acknowledge the date anymore, though the silence in the house felt heavier. Marla had taken up drinking. Greg buried himself in work and never spoke of Emily. The police had long closed the case. The phone rang at 11:14 p.m. Greg looked at the caller ID. Unknown. He almost didn't answer, but something compelled him. "Hello?" he said. There was a pause, then a voice, soft, familiar. "Hi, Dad?" Greg froze. Marla, who had been dozing on the couch with a wine glass in hand, looked up. "Emily?" he whispered, color draining from his face. Marla stood quickly, rushing to the phone. "Who is this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" The voice trembled. "I want to come home. I'm cold." Then the line went dead. The next morning, Greg didn't go to work. He sat in the living room, staring at Emily's old drawings. Marla was pacing, her face pale and drawn. They had buried the past. Literally, 15 years ago, Emily had discovered something. She had seen Greg and Marla in the garage, screaming at each other. Emily, in her innocence, recorded it on an old handheld tape recorder. The fight had turned violent. Emily had been caught in the middle when she tried to stop them. There had been a fall, a sickening crack. Greg had panicked. "We can't let them take her away," Marla had sobbed. "They'll say we killed her." So they made a decision, a cruel, heartless decision. They buried Emily deep in the woods behind their house, under the roots of an old willow tree, one she used to climb. The town mourned with them, and they pretended. But now, someone knew. That night, the phone rang again. This time, Greg recorded it. "Dad, you and Mom buried me, but I came back." "You're not Emily," Greg said, trembling. "You can't be." There was a faint giggle. The line crackled with static. "You should visit the tree. Bring flowers." Then silence. Marla sobbed uncontrollably, whispering prayers. Greg, compelled by something he couldn't explain, grabbed a flashlight and headed into the woods. It was almost midnight. The willow tree looked different, bigger, twisted somehow, as if it had grown unnaturally. Greg stepped close. The wind had picked up, but it wasn't cold. It was hot, like breath on the back of his neck. His flashlight flickered, then died. Then he heard it, a scraping sound, like tiny nails against bark. And then a whisper. "Daddy." He turned. No one. He turned back. There was something on the tree now. A face, pushing outward from the bark, eyes wide and mouth frozen in a silent scream. He staggered back, tripped, and fell hard onto the cold earth. The soil beneath him was loose, freshly dug. He crawled backwards, heart pounding, and that's when he saw her, Emily, or what looked like Emily. She was older. Her eyes were too dark, her smile too wide. Her clothes were decayed, skin pale as wax. She stepped from behind the tree like she had never left. "I came back, Daddy," he screamed. Greg didn't return home. Marla went out the next morning to find him. All she saw was his flashlight, cracked in two at the base of the tree. Then the phone rang again. She ran back to the house and answered it, shaking. "Mom, come outside. I want to see you." She screamed and slammed the phone down. That night, the house changed. Drawings appeared on the walls, childlike sketches in crayon of a family. Mom, Dad, and a little girl with X's for eyes. Emily's bedroom door creaked open on its own. The smell of flowers, rotted and damp, filled the hallway. Marla ran upstairs and found a piece of Emily's scrapbook on the bed. One line, written in childish handwriting. "Mommy, why did you hurt me?" A week later, the house was found abandoned. No sign of Greg, no sign of Marla, Just a phone off the hook and a trail of muddy footprints leading from the back door into the woods. The town whispered about the wards again. Some claimed they saw a woman walking hand in hand with a pale girl through the trees. Others said the tree behind the house was cursed. But one thing was certain. Every year, on the night of November 14th, that house's landline rings. If you answer it, a soft voice whispers through the static, "Do you want to play with me?"